Hi, welcome to another video of this channel. In this video, I'll cover Underground Blossom, which continues the story of William Vanderboom, now reborn as Laura. This game is quite different from the rest of the series, as nothing in it is literal. The whole story is told entirely through metaphors, using a train station to symbolize time passing. There was already a bit of this symbolic storytelling in Roots, especially with the timepiece scenes, but Underground Blossom takes this much further and is much more abstract, so this video is only my interpretation of its meaning. In Underground Blossom, we play as Harvey, and the game picks up right where Roots and Samsara Room left off, with Rose just after giving birth to Laura. Yes, Rose is actually Laura's biological mother, as it seems like that final scene in Roots with the strange red area and the sacrifices was actually in Rose's womb. The Roots absorbed Frank and Leonard's lives and the 10 sacrifices and transferred them into Rose. That's why she was kept alive. She needed to give birth to Laura. Anyway, Underground Blossom is divided into separate stations, representing different stages of Laura's life. The first one, Crib Station, symbolizes her infancy. At the start, Harvey meets Rose, who introduces him to baby Laura and asks him to watch over her. That's because Rose needed to leave soon to help her father, Albert, with his plan, as I explained in my video on the past within. He feeds her milk and changes her diaper, which could represent that Rose brought Harvey to Laura early on as a sort of guardian angel. Of course, while he's just a parrot in the real world, Harvey's box proves that he still has some human intelligence, even as a bird. Near Rose, there is a suitcase, suggesting she and Laura were travelling at the time, away from Rusty Lake and presumably to America, as is suggested in the white door. After this, a train appears. You see, the railways represent different lives, and Laura's journey is symbolised by this brown train, which stops at the stations of her life. Interestingly, the ticket inspector is Mr. Crow in his human form, Aldous, while the lady who hands out the tickets is a mysterious woman. It's hard to say for sure, but she resembles Alexandra Vanderboom from Servant of the Lake's demo, and the old lady from the mill too. This means she might be Aldous's wife, making her Laura's great-grandmother. The next station, or stage of Laura's life, is Child Lane, Laura's childhood. It likely takes place around 1939, when Laura was around 4, since we see a newspaper that mentions the deaths of Dale's parents. Here, Rose reminds Harvey that she'll soon have to leave Laura to help Albert, so she asks Harvey to protect Laura, and this refers to her golden timepiece from Roots. I'll explain this in a second. Next, we receive a phone call from Albert's corrupted soul, who says he's coming to get Rose and that she's aware of this, meaning she and her father were in contact. I guess Albert was pressuring Rose to leave Laura, though she didn't want to. After the phone call, we see a scene that shows the most traumatic event in Laura's life. Laura was playing with a camera and taking pictures of her mother when Albert's corrupted soul suddenly appeared, wearing his devilish deer mask and scaring Laura. He takes Rose away, which the game depicts as them entering a different train. Not a brown one, but a white one, which shows that Rose isn't part of Laura's life anymore. Just like Leonard, Laura was traumatized by the fact that a shadowy figure took her mother away. But Rose did leave 2 things behind, her golden timepiece and a note telling Harvey to use it to protect Laura. It appears that because of Laura's unconventional birth, she was vulnerable to disturbing visions and hallucinations, as well as attacks from hellish voices. But somehow, Rose's timepiece acted as a shield against these visions, which is why she always kept it close to Laura, and, knowing she'd have to leave soon, entrusted Harvey to keep it for her. I doubt Laura knew about it, but as long as Harvey kept it near her, she would be safe. But Harvey couldn't have been Laura's actual legal guardian, being a parrot and whatnot, so Laura probably ended up being raised in an orphanage or something, but I guess the developers thought it was boring and left it out completely. Later, Underground Blossom had an update that lets us board the white train that Rose took, following the second track that represents her life. This line splits off from Laura's one, symbolizing how Rose's life diverged from Laura's. The only stop along Rose's line is called Research Facility, taking place roughly 40 years after Child Lane, and it shows Rose in her lab. Though we still play as Harvey here, it's probably just for gameplay consistency. I doubt he visited her lab in reality. I already covered Research Facility in depth in my video on The Past Within. Click here to check that out. To summarize, Rose continued helping Albert with his plan, but revealed she wasn't just doing it for him. It's actually all for Laura's sake. More on that later. The next snapshot of Laura's life is School Street, which takes place during her adolescent years at school, and even after so long, Laura still misses her mother very much. The photo she took when she was 4 is something she still keeps and treasures, since it's the only thing she has left of her mother. Throughout her school years, Laura was very lonely, never fitting in with her classmates' little groups and relationships. She was always alone. One kid called Johnny apparently bullied her, even stealing her photos, her last connection to Rose. The same student also drew a picture of Harvey's Asura form in his notebook, which shows he was with Laura frequently to keep the timepiece close. But how could he have been in Asura form? I doubt Harvey could still switch between his animal and Asura forms like we saw Mr. Bat could. It seemed Mr. Owl permanently transformed him into an animal in exchange for him not being dead. Maybe Johnny just drew him human looking because he was bad at drawing birds. Once the photos are recovered, the next train arrives. This one seems to be summoned by Laura herself, perhaps symbolizing that she had found a level of control over her own life, although that's a bit of a stretch. Next up is Bird Bridge Station, taking place during Laura's early adulthood, around 1960. By then, she'd taken an interest in drawing and sketching, as though trying to preserve her memories, such as her mother. Quite touching, and this memory preservation is a theme important to Rusty Lake. Near the beginning of this level, a train arrives, a white train representing another person's life crossing over Laura's, and within the train is
Robert Hill. They call me Bob.
He later became Laura's boyfriend, but for most of this level they stand apart at opposite ends of the platform. They are near, but not part of each other's lives yet. First, Bob purchases some food from the coffee vendor, a man who sells coffee, sandwiches and donuts at outrageously high prices, while claiming everything is fresh and most delicious, when in truth, everything is terrible and contains used cigarette butts and even worms. I think this terrible man isn't real, but a metaphor for life's challenges and obstacles. Yet despite him, Laura and Bob still make the most of it. Laura is still grateful for the coffee, and Bob simply picks out the worms. This shows Laura's positivity and resilience, which is sustained by the timepiece. But then, a tragedy occurs. Up until now, Harvey had been faithfully protecting Laura with the timepiece, but in this station, a shady man appears. And he's a thief, who steals all of Harvey's items, including the crucial timepiece. Harvey failed Rose's task, and the lights start flickering to show how this has made everything unstable. It's unclear how Harvey actually lost the timepiece in reality, since I doubt the thief was an actual person. But since the game shows the thief arrived on the same train as Bob's co-workers, and we saw in the white door an achievement that showed Harvey alone in the factory, maybe Harvey got separated from Laura there, and in the confusion, the timepiece was lost? However it happened, by 1964, Laura's mental state started to destabilize because of the missing timepiece. We also see this saxophone player who represents fate throwing random events into life. The first time he plays, a fish appears, trademark Rusty Lake humor. But the second time, a robin appears, and this bird draws Bob and Laura together. They bond over it and fall in love, bridging the gap between their lives, which is why it's called Bird Bridge Station. We saw this scene in more detail during the white door, and it shows this bird is how they started dating. Although Laura's clothes are different, I'm sure it's the same scene. The bench, the sketchbook, Bob hesitating to say something until the bird appears, it's all the same. An early trailer even showed the bench in Bird Bridge was originally identical to the white doors. It's shown twice because it's an important moment to Laura, not because they fell in love twice over separate robins. Laura does say she remembers seeing Bob before, but that could be because she brought Harvey's bird food from his factory, which Bob's co-workers all briefly appearing suggests. Or maybe they used to be classmates, since School Street showed a mysterious student who might have been Bob. But sadly, even though Laura found love, it wasn't enough to counter her instability from the timepiece's loss, and this becomes clear in the following station. The 5th station is called Sorrow Cross because Laura feels sorrow at this point. It begins on a bleak note, with her breaking up with Bob. The white door shows she left him because she wanted to visit Rusty Lake, the mental health retreat, and her birthplace. Cube Escape, Harvey's box, revealed this happened in 1969, 5 years later. The second they separate, Bob is whisked away on another white train, showing that their lives have diverged now. He leaves his wallet behind, however, which contains the card he got from Sarah White for the white door. The events of that game happened just after the breakup, so this train leads there. Next, the thief reappears. Harvey tries to negotiate with him for the timepiece, but sadly fails. This could mean that he made a last attempt to recover it in vain. That's possibly why he was in the factory in the white door achievement. Soon, Laura became depressed and decided to visit Rusty Lake. But this was one of the worst decisions of her life, for it was far from a relaxing retreat. She was attacked by corrupted souls, found dead bodies, and saw awful things. Season shows that her trip to Rusty Lake drove her insane, and it made her begin to have terrifying hallucinations and flashbacks. In Sorrow Cross, we see a pigeon get hit by a train in a gruesome explosion, which could represent that. She was apparently also seeing Dr. Peter Clark, who was the art therapist from the White Door. He prescribed her medication, which must be where the Prozac prescription from Seasons came from. But he warned her that the medicine couldn't cure her because her fears were too deeply rooted in the past. Interesting phrasing. Rooted sounds like a reference to the events of Roots when Laura was William. Maybe William's horrifying memories were embedded deep in Laura's mind, and by visiting the lake where William lived, this triggered them and made them resurface. That's why Rose moved her away from the lake, and why the timepiece was needed. Well, Laura took the medicine, but this turned out to be another bad choice, as it only worsened her visions and contributed to her madness. The lights of the station start flickering, symbolizing this instability. She began having nightmares, where she was forced to relive the terror of Albert taking Rose, the guilt of leaving Bob, and all her other bad memories, the fear and regret feeling fresh. But she also sees the future. She dreams of Dale Vandermeer, even though they never met, Harvey holding a cherry blossom branch, which hadn't happened yet, and even this.
I dream of my mother. She has grown old. She holds a black cube.
This very scene happens in the past within. But Laura was somehow seeing it 13 years before it happened. Clearly, this clairvoyance wasn't just mental illness, they were something supernatural, and they break Laura completely. Something notable in Sorrow Cross is that its tiles are a hideous blood red colour. Since nothing in Underground Blossom is real, I think this colour means something. In Rusty Lake, there are 6 different realms of existence based on the Buddhist cycle of samsara, and one of them is known as Naraka, or Hell. In theatre, it's depicted as a red forest drenched in blood. During Laura's nightmares, trees appear against the red tiles of Sorrow Cross, evoking the red forest of hell, and in Seasons, Laura even saw the red forest in her visions. It's as if her visions somehow came from hell itself, perhaps caused by William's ritual. Previously, the timepiece protected against them, but now, freed by the timepiece's loss, awakened by the trip to the lake, and strengthened by the medication, they drive her crazy. As the nightmares overwhelmed her, she said,
Is she still alive? Where did she go? Will I ever know?
The very next scene is Laura's dead body. The cave confirms Laura killed herself, but Underground Blossom reveals it wasn't just because of the visions. The core of it was Rose's absence, leaving an unfillable void. She didn't become depressed just because of the missing timepiece. If she had been there, Laura could have learned to understand her visions and wouldn't have been so vulnerable to begin with. It would never have gotten so bad. After all, her last words were her wondering about her mother, and her visions fed on that. She had just finished painting a picture of Rose, and she was wearing Rose's old dress from 1933 when she made the final choice. But she wasn't able to rest in peace. A year later, Aldous turned her into a corrupted soul, the worst state of being, a state of endless suffering. While leaving, we catch a glimpse of Dale investigating Laura's death. I guess they took some artistic license, since that happened a year before her corruption. But the next station, Soul Street, may not happen right after. For the story to make sense, many off-screen events must have happened between Sorrow Cross and Soul Street. You see, Mr. Owl, the ruler of the lake, was preparing to step down. He'd planned a ritual at the Rusty Lake Hotel where his successor would be chosen, and it would either be Laura Vanderboom or Detective Dale Vandermeer. During this ritual, one of them would become the successor, but the other would die. In preparation, Mr. Owl teleported Laura and Dale back to Rusty Lake. He took them to the basement of the hotel, where Dale entered the elevator and ascended to the hotel. Then Mr. Crow somehow restored Laura's human state, and she entered a second elevator. The shaft has 2 carriages, I guess. Once everyone reached the hotel, the Day of the Lake ritual happened. From the clues we've seen, Dale became the new ruler and Laura died again, becoming a corrupted soul for the 3rd time. I believe it's during this, Laura's 3rd corruption, that Soul Street takes place. Unlike the previous neatly tiled stations, Soul Street looks all dead and decayed, like a railway maintenance tunnel, because it represents Laura as a corrupted soul, not a living person like before. Laura's corrupted soul is here, but she's calmer and more lucid than she was in the mill. That's because there's different levels of corruption. The more unstable someone is, the more violent their corrupted soul. For example, stable people like Caroline and William had calm, rational, corrupted souls that could carry out plans. But Laura's depression made it so that the first time she was corrupted, she became a bloodthirsty demon, lashing out at everything before Aldous stopped her. I'm guessing that for the ritual, Mr. Owl tried to remove both Dale and Laura's trauma to cleanse their corrupted souls for their ascension. This process worked better for Dale than for Laura, since Mr. Owl likely didn't know what Rose was doing either, and couldn't bring closure there. Perhaps when their past lives were weighed, Laura's was heavier because of her remaining sorrow, so she died again while Dale ascended. Still, the cleansing had some effect, and that's why although she's a corrupted soul here, she's less corrupted. In Seasons, we found out that after the ritual, Laura's corrupted soul spent 9 years making a resurrection plan involving gathering various items. For one, she unlocked Harvey's cage and sent him to retrieve it. This is represented in Soul Street. When Laura sees Harvey, she sends him away to search for her mother's timepiece. While Seasons showed her time traveling, Harvey wouldn't see that from his perspective. Harvey spent 16 years searching for this object, and this difficult quest is shown by him torturing the thief and making him return the timepiece, which represents how Harvey relentlessly gave this task his all, dedicated to Laura's mission. Eventually, the thief finally surrenders the timepiece's location, and Harvey finds it in a box. Interestingly, the box the timepiece was in looks the same as the one that contained the green diamond in the lake. That diamond was shown to possess the power of warding off corrupted souls, just like the timepiece, so I wonder if Laura was researching that as well. After all, Mr. Owl had it with him. Anyway, Harvey brings the item back to Laura just as he does in Seasons, when he triumphantly returns to her house with a cherry blossom branch in his beak. just like in Laura's visions. Though Soul Street depicts the Blossom Branch as the timepiece, it's likely the same object as in Seasons, and they made it the timepiece just for narrative consistency. While the details of Laura's plan are unclear, I'll cover them properly in Seasons. The general idea is she connected these objects to create some sort of soul-cleansing time travel telephone device, where she travels to some sort of space in between cubes and time. In Soul Street, this time stuff is symbolized by the hands of the timepiece spinning faster and faster until the thing shatters. This shows Laura has gone outside of time. The final train arrives, leading to the final phase of her plan. Laura boards it with Harvey this time, representing her breaking away from her original path and taking her fate into her own hands. She leaves behind the crumbling ruins and goes to the place where time doesn't exist, the lake, the final station. The station, as the name suggests, takes place at the bottom of the lake. While we never saw Laura there during Seasons, we did see her in some sort of liminal space between cubes, so that's probably when this takes place. Here, Laura says she remembers the tree. This might mean she remembers her past life in Roots. After all, simply being near the lake had triggered all those memories and visions, so being within the lake must have brought everything back. Rose is here too. To recap how that's possible. In the past within, Rose grew old in 1984 while creating another timeline containing her 17-year-old self. Then they entered each other's timeline. But as they are the same person, it created a circular looping paradox. Past Rose became future Rose, becoming past Rose, becoming future Rose, and so on. This infinite recursion made the timelines crash, resetting everything. The two Roses, now forced into one timeline, merged into a single entity and became a tree, its blossoms representing her soul. At the end of the past within, we saw Harvey in the distance, and the stained glass from Sorrow Cross also shows he and Laura were near Rose's tree, so we know they were really there. Noticing her daughter, Rose emerges from the tree and says she now belongs to the lake. She refers to herself as enlightened, and while this is different from the samsara stuff we're familiar with, I guess that by becoming one with everything like a fungus, she attained another type of enlightenment. After her speech, she returns to the tree, and the blossoms of her essence float away towards Laura. In Sorrow Cross, Laura's voice echoed when she became corrupted, showing that her mother leaving was the root of her corruption, something Mr. Owl couldn't cure. But now, finally having found closure, Laura's soul is healed. She's enveloped in Rose's blossoms, cycling through the stages of her life before being reborn as her 1964 self without corruption. With the knowledge of her mother's presence, Laura says she can live another life without sorrow, and she walks away into the forest. This represents the end of Seasons, where Laura entered the 1964 cube, and a mysterious white light appeared and restored her human state. Then, she returned to her house in 1981, where she looks out the window with a big, content smile. This is her life without sorrow, her happy ending. While Seasons never showed Rose or the lake, I think the developers deliberately kept things vague in Seasons, only showing a nondescript white beam and a bare tree, so they'd have room to elaborate on it later on, which they did in this game. Strangely, unlike Rose, who says she belongs to the lake, Laura says the lake belongs to her. Maybe she became like Caroline, the lady of the lake, whom the lake gained respect for. Or maybe, because she time traveled, she won the ritual in the new timeline? I doubt she was interested in that though, and we saw her exiting the cube in Seasons, so most likely not. Oh, also, Rose had planned to heal Laura like this from the beginning. As she said in the research facility,
"It's all for her."
Her chalkboard proves that her plan was to exploit the recursive time paradox to turn herself into a tree and revive Laura from the very beginning. The two plans of Rose and Laura worked towards the same goal, and both relied on the other to succeed. After finishing the game, we unlock a train map that lets us revisit all the previous stations. When returning to the lake, Mr. Owl is there in his diving suit and tells us to collect all the hidden cubes. Once we do, a new station opens, the hotel. This bonus station branches off Crib Station, so it must also take place around the 1930s. It begins on a strange white balcony with portraits of Aldous and William, a teaser for Servant of the Lake. Then, Harvey rides a boat to the hotel itself, where Mr. Owl greets him at the door and announces,
"We have work to do. The day of the lake is coming."
This is probably a teaser for the Day of the Lake game and Servant of the Lake. And it also shows Harvey was helping Mr. Owl with his ritual, even as a parrot. I've seen some say that it also shows Harvey possesses time travel, since Mr. Owl tells him we will meet again in the lake, and then Harvey goes to the past to meet him. But I'm skeptical. This line was likely referring to Day of the Lake itself, and anyway, his whole hidden cube thing wasn't literal either. As for the train map, I doubt it's a time machine either. Roots had a similar post-game puzzle where we revisited previous scenes to search for hidden items, and finding all of them unlocked a new level set at the beginning. There was even the cryptic message, "The past is never dead." But clearly William had no reason to time travel there. I think the same goes for Underground Blossom. And while Harvey appears during 1796 in Paradise, I think this just shows that, like the Alanders, he's very old, not a time traveler. After the hotel, there's another hidden scene. By rearranging the cubes to match the symbol order from the collection, a new scene takes place, set in the basement of the hotel. Inside, Laura herself is in the second elevator, somehow human again. Mr. Crow says she's ready, so she must have passed a test like the one Dale went through in Paradox. This time, Mr. Crow rides the elevator with her as it ascends toward the hotel for the climax of the series, the Day of the Lake. Of course, it'll probably be years before we actually see it, since Rusty Lake has many other games planned, but we'll get there. He also says, "We will meet again." This clearly refers to the Day of the Lake, further supporting that Mr. Owl was also referring to that earlier. The question is, how is Laura alive here? It was probably because of something Mr. Crow did, perhaps involving the strange corruption-removing device he had in the basement. Now, while we see this scene happening after the lake scene with Rose, I actually think it happens before. When we approach the basement, we hear Laura's voice echo,
Where did she go?
suggesting that she hadn't reunited with Rose yet here. Her whole speech about living a life without sorrow also doesn't really fit with the Day of the Lake, where it seems she died. And the elevator that Mr. Crow put Dale in at the end of the cave can be seen as we enter the basement. That means this scene happens seconds after the cave, so there's no time for the whole Blossom tornado plan to have already happened. And since Mr. Owl seemed unaware of Rose's plan, he couldn't have been counting on her to revive Laura. And anyway, Soul Street lines up a lot better with Seasons, with Laura sending Harvey to search for an item and Harvey returning to Laura with it. So although we see the scenes in this order, it probably takes place like this. Finally, there's one last bonus station, the distribution center, which was part of an ARG called Best Kept Memory. This was a service where people could store or remove their own memories, and it's interesting because at first it looks really sketchy, but they're actually quite honest and transparent about things, the exact opposite of the white door. And it was apparently created in the early 2000s, nearly 3 decades after Dale replaced Mr. Owl as ruler of the lake. Perhaps Dale, as the new ruler, created Best Kept Memory as a more ethical way to collect cubes for the lake. Unlike Mr. Owl, who locked people up and extracted their cubes without their consent, Best Kept Memory lets people willingly volunteer their memories, with a full disclosure of their side effects, which is much more considerate. While Mr. Owl literally couldn't care less about ethics, able to murder his whole family in the name of the lake, Dale was different. I believe he rules with morals, turning Rusty Lake into a better place. This connects with Buddhist mythology. Asuras, like Mr. Owl, were noted for their anger, while Devas, like Dale, were not. But it seems like Dale had one problem, Albert, who continued causing chaos at Rusty Lake. The distribution center had a mysterious black cube containing information about Albert, and it was being studied and monitored. They also had one of Rose's memories somehow, so perhaps Dale was using these to figure out Albert's weakness and defeat him. But in 2004, he managed to create a security breach, broke into best kept memory, caused mayhem, and stole the cube. It looks like Albert became the new bad guy of Rusty Lake, like the guests' corrupted souls before him. Comment if you have your own theories, and subscribe so you don't miss the next part, where we'll finally begin the Cube Escape series. Thanks for watching.